And I wish that would have been a little bit more of my priority. And I think as an executive director, you have huge responsibilities. But like if your team isn't like the first or one of the first, like it will probably cause you a lot more problems.
Welcome to the Impact Roadmap, a podcast designed to give you the practical, concrete steps to grow your nonprofit or future-forward business in a sustainable way. I'm your host, Joey Goon. Let's get into the episode. Hey friends, I am super excited to have you tuning into the Impact Roadmap podcast today, where we talk about how to build a life full with purpose and use business as a force for good, whether you're in the for-profit or the nonprofit world. And today we have the pleasure of interviewing Delaney Mullennix. She is the new executive director of Nonprofit Hub. She joined the team in 2021 as the director of partnerships. And Delaney, super exciting. I don't know if I'm stealing your thunder here, but you are now the executive director. So congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
And now you're really helping to manage and sustain the organization's continued growth, national presence, partnership profiles, and highly trafficked educational media platform, which is one of the biggest in the country. And we're on your email newsletter list. You always have incredible people that are coming on and adding just tremendous amounts of value to the nonprofit community. That's a part of your membership. So thank you so much for joining us today, and excited to have you.
Thank you so much. Excited to be here.
Fill in the gaps. What did I miss on just color in all the areas that we left out on your short bio? Tell us a little bit more about you.
Yes, just a short 30 years of history to cover. So how long do I have?
As long as you need.
Yes, no. So I have been with Nonprofit Hub just over a year and a half. It's an amazing nonprofit organization. We help nonprofit professionals grow not only in their careers and in their leadership positions, be proud of the work that they're doing in the nonprofit sector, and then help them tackle day-to-day challenges that can impede growth for their organization or their mission. So ranging from fundraising to marketing, communications, and branding, but covering really any nonprofit pain point: burnout, fatigue, working with your board of directors, accounting, financial principles, whatever it is that can impact your growth, putting on good events, you name it. We probably have some type of resource on that. And we really pride ourselves on making that accessible. So as you mentioned, like being new to an executive director position, and I'm so humbled, and this is going to be a huge learning experience for me to have never been in an ED role before. We have this like concept of like self-taught executive director, and it's not something that probably anyone listening has not heard before, but that is like where the passion of Nonprofit Hub exists. So when you're put into a role of something that you're constantly learning, regardless of your degree. So I have a master's degree in nonprofit management. I have a bachelor's degree in social work. I've been doing marketing and been in like a middle management level position of businesses, private, for-profit and nonprofit organizations. And you always have to ask Google something like every day. And so when you are faced with these things where you just need a quick answer, you need to complete a task, you need to fulfill a responsibility, and you're relying on Google for information to get you past that thing of your day, that is a passion behind Nonprofit Hub and why we want to be the first thing that you see on Google if you're asking how to host your first board meeting, or how to ask for a major gift, or there's a challenging board member on the board of directors. How do I work with them? We want to be the first thing that you see, and we want you to be able to have bite-sized, digestible information to get through your day. So that's a little bit about my background and where I came from, but I've always just had a passion for cause-related organizations, mission-driven organizations. I started volunteering probably in elementary school and was involved in all of the different philanthropic organizations in high school. Went to social work, was working in direct care for a while in a residential unit for sex trafficking victims, and realized that as much as I loved social causes and working hands-on with people in the community and furthering missions, I am a businesswoman through and through. And so took the next step to kind of work in nonprofit administration from there. And here we are.
What inspired you to get into the world of nonprofit work and ultimately then pursue a degree in social work and a master's in nonprofit management?
Yeah. So there were, and I think this is probably characteristic of several people. personal life situations kind of thrust me into understanding that there are so many different challenges that people are facing around the world and this like level of inequity. And when I grew up in like a very like small town, like white suburbia, like everyone's pretty well off, like middle class, supportive families, good education. Um, in kind of like in this sheltered world that like didn't open my eyes. And that's why I'm so grateful for colleges that offer like liberal studies programs. And that's where I got both of my degrees, was in a liberal university, a liberal study university. Um, and I remember like significantly my high school year of or my senior year of high school, I was like steady track into business marketing. I had gotten early admission into the Seidman College of Business at Grand Valley State University because of my experiences in DECA, which is a marketing and management chapter or association for high school students to compete with others across the country in marketing and management skills. And I now serve as a competitive event judge for DECA, but I was in it for almost all 4 years of high school, I think. And so I had gotten this early admittance into the College of Business, was like full speed ahead marketing business major. And by the end of my freshman year, I think I had just been through several personal experiences where I'm like, wait, like people are really struggling. Like, what about everyone else? And I don't think that I can morally use my skill set and dedicate my life to a private for-profit company when I know of all of these things that are happening. And it was almost like a distraction for me. Like I couldn't stop like thinking about it and fighting for it. And like, it was just always in the back of my mind. So I completely dropped out of the business marketing program and I started going for social work. But I do remember the vivid situation that I'm talking about. It was actually my senior year of high school, and there was a boy in my class. It was our Spanish class. We had to take like 2 years of Spanish, and he was always kind of a troublemaker. Played football, was kind of like a charismatic guy. So he got along with everyone. He did well, but he probably wasn't performing well in school, and he did get in trouble a lot. But like the teachers loved him because he would just have that charismatic troublemaker personality. And I remember this teacher, the Spanish teacher, we were in class one day and he kept making comments, like kind of crude comments about her because she was an attractive woman. And the first thing that he said, she like kicked him out of the office and sent him to the principal's office. And I remember being so livid, and I couldn't quite like pinpoint like where my emotion came from. But all I knew is that every teacher that had that child in class knew that he was troubled, probably didn't come from a supportive background or a supportive family, and had probably been in trouble a couple times, right? Like in high school. So he gets sent down to the principal's office, probably for saying something like, oh, like you look good in that t-shirt or something. Like nothing terrible. I don't remember it being like terrible. And, all in her rights to say that she was uncomfortable with that and send him to the principal's office. But he got expelled because it was like his whatever second or third offense. And so I kind of just dwelled like in that feeling of this high school student who doesn't go home to healthy food, doesn't go home to parents that are there, goes home maybe to like an alcoholic father, doesn't have like a supportive environment, never gets new school clothes, is now expelled from school because there was like this lack of understanding of like, I don't know, just
his
people, resources in their immediate environments. Yeah. And I just couldn't stop thinking about it. I'm like, how can I be raised in the way I have been raised with all of these resources, the supportive family, and others aren't getting the same? And like that to me just was never okay. And so I spent like a lot of time after that working in intercept programs with youth who are first time offenders, and just like working really in that direct programming of like social work and health and human service organizations, whether it was mental health or just general like basic necessities. I worked in a homeless shelter for a little while. And then again, just like work structure wise, I still am just a business minded person. And, all of my experience have just led me to being like this multi-passionate individual. And so working with Nonprofit Hub, where we help advance the mission of any nonprofit professional that's driven to do it, that's driven to get past these barriers to growth. And that's a really exciting opportunity. And I think something that's really unique, especially when it comes to working in the nonprofit sector. So I'm super excited about that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that backstory. That's it's amazing that you have such a deep, rooted connection to driving social equity, and really, you have the empathy of inserting yourself and trying to see things from his perspective and walking in his shoes for just a moment, opposed to coming to a quick judgmental decision about him and his situation because of a comment that was made. And I'm sure you're right. I'm sure he is regretting that comment that he made to this day. And here you are, yet so touched and influenced and impacted by that one comment, and thinking about, gosh, what would his life, what could his life look like if he just had someone to sit down with him and really understand and empathize with his situation?
Right. Yeah. And that's hard to do. Everyone's perspectives are so strong.
Yeah. We're so set in our own narrative. Dr. Joe, are you familiar with Dr. Joe Dispenza?
No.
He has a quote. He's a psychologist and a neuroscientist, and he has a quote that's something along the lines, and I'm going to butcher it, but it's like, by the time you're 30 years old, you're a set of pre-programmed beliefs.
Yeah.
You're sort of conditioned based on this. You're pre-programmed in your ideologies and the belief systems that you have, and your mind becomes like a computer system, and you really have to shock yourself, to subject yourself to uncertainty, to risk, to new scenarios and situations, and interacting with other people from a place and a lens of curiosity, as opposed to thinking that you understand, because we really don't. Don't. I think this is a great learning lesson for you that I'm sure you now carry with you in your life, in your daily experiences and your interactions as a new executive director. So I'm just curious, what are some of the learning lessons that you've learned as an ED that no education could have prepared you for, except for actually experiencing the lessons through lived experience?
Oh, geez.
And there's probably not just one, but I'm wondering if there's maybe one thing that stands out that'll resonate, like where another executive director listening back to this podcast interview is going to nod her or his head in affirmation and be like, yes, girl, preach.
There is one thing I think that has been kind of obvious to me I've been in the position for 1 month exactly. And I think coming into a position where you have relatively little training, like as much as you could have possibly gotten from the exiting executive director, and no formal experience outside of that, knowing that you're taking on all of these additional responsibilities, also knowing that you're going to have to hire for your other position and then manage the team on top of it. I think that going into it, I'm like, I can do it. I know I can be successful. This accounting stuff is easy. This reconciliation stuff is easy. All of these all of these additional responsibilities as I was taking on as an executive director that were more task oriented, check it off the list, just get it done. Easy, not worried about it, very confident in that regard. What kind of has taken most of my brain power the last month is managing a team. So the human resources in your organization. And I would say, I think the lesson that I've learned is it is not about you. And I can't say that enough, because I remember when I took on the role, I have all of these insecurities and all these worries and all of these responsibilities and demands that are coming onto me. But really none of that mattered. I didn't put the team should have been my worry first. I should have, sat down with them and been what are your worries and insecurities and concerns, as a big part of leadership is transitioning. And I wish that would have been a little bit more of my priority. And I think as an executive director, you have huge responsibilities. But like if your team isn't like the first or one of the first, like it will probably cause you a lot more problems.
I love that. So just to summarize, I'm hearing that you're giving up being egocentric, which is focused
Mm-hmm.
on self, to being more ecocentric, which is focused on the benefit of the entire system and the community.
Yeah.
And I love that. And I think that as leaders, all we can do is give up the idea of our own identity, because I think there are leaders out there that come from a place of assertion or dominance, but then there are also leaders out there that come from a place of feeling a sense of imposter syndrome. Like, why me? I don't have all the
Yep.
answers. And I think the beautiful thing that a lot of people are realizing in leadership positions is that it's not about having all the answers. It's about
No.
asking the entire group questions that
Yep.
empower them and make them feel invigorated. And, people give energy towards the things that they get to create. And so something that we actually did yesterday in our group, our all hands group meeting at a company, is we said, hey, here at Utopia, we're a learning organization. We're going to continue to evolve and grow. And, and what we would love to do is just hear your voices. What do you love about Utopia, and what would you love to see? And the
Mm-hmm.
feedback was incredible. And I think for me as a leader, that's like really empowering to see, like, these are things that I genuinely care about and I'm going to take into consideration and into heart as we, move forward in our like vision of who we are becoming as an organization. And
Yeah.
I love that. And I relate to you so deeply on that, because it is about giving up self in service of the greater mission.
Yeah, and I love that you're inquiring with your team and bringing them into like decision making opportunities. And I think that someone said to me recently in a meeting that great ideas can come from anywhere at any time in any place. And so outside of even setting aside like you like made a designated meeting for time for this to happen, I think if you are consciously aware of that all day long, um like what are great ideas that people are putting out there if you just like open the door to that conversation like continuously throughout the day, because especially when like I live in like a world of like extreme marketing, right? And you have to be creative, and alone I am nothing. But when we put an idea with four other people, the idea becomes so amazing and so cool and like generates so much energy. But I can't do it alone. Like I need to be able to bounce like creative ideas off around other people, because everyone has thoughts and experiences and ideas that you would have never ever like they never would have crossed your mind. And so I love that concept.
Yeah, the collective whole is more powerful than any individual. It's like Peter
Mm-hmm.
Drucker's quote. Peter Drucker he's known for a quote that is, we have to align our strengths so much so in any human system that the weaknesses become irrelevant. So an
Mm-hmm.
alignment of collective good, of people coming together that are all heart-centered and focused on one mission, one purpose, that drowns out all of the weaknesses, and the weaknesses in any human system then become irrelevant. We're so
Mm-hmm.
incredibly powerful together. So let's
Yeah.
talk about that. What's something that you're like super proud of right now? I feel that as leaders in organizations that sometimes we're afraid to feel our joy all the way through, because and like as human beings, we don't have any problem feeling sadness. We don't shame ourselves when we're sad or when we're fearful or when we're angry or when we feel feelings of intimacy. We feel those things without challenge or self-judgment. But when we feel joy, all of a sudden we mistakenly believe that we're being boastful or inefficient or arrogant. And I think that leaders who don't adequately celebrate their wins and appreciate themselves and their teams are actually dangerous, because they're unconsciously limiting things that should be and would be otherwise celebratory. So what is something that you are proud of right now? You have no judgment, like just brag on your team or on yourself or something that's going on in your life right now that you're super proud of.
Um, I have to say that like recently I've had this like stint of energy around like my mind just like constantly cycles all day long, all night, and usually about work. But that's because I like it. Like it's exciting to me and I can't like stop thinking about it. Um,
Yes, I love that.
yeah, but I was thinking about doing putting together a presentation that I might be able to do at some conferences coming up next year. And big part of what Nonprofit Hub used to be. And Nonprofit has been around for 20 some years. And it's an exceptional educational media platform, but an essence that it had prior to a lot of leadership and brand changes was you're supposed to feel cool by working in nonprofit work. Like where did that feeling go? I feel like lately it's been like you're doing really hard work, like you might get burnt out, like here are the best practices, like make sure you stay on top of digital marketing, like more, like don't fall behind. I don't know, like there's just like this weird essence now where I want to build a presentation that's like be nonprofit proud in like why, and I have like so many cool ideas on it, and like I probably could like do a presentation tomorrow if I had to on it, but um like when I picture, have you ever had a conversation with someone that's in a nonprofit, especially in like the area of development, and you say, what do you do for work? And the response is kind of like, oh, I work in fundraising. Like it's kind of like almost a weird, timid response. Like they don't really want to tell you that they work in fundraising. And then have you ever been watching a conversation like that and the other person almost displays like pity for a fundraiser? Like, have you
I
ever,
can
I don't know.
visualize that. Yes.
Yeah. And so like the response is like, oh, that must be like really hard work. Or like, how did you get into that? Or like, why are you doing that? And so I want to like inspire the sector to be very proud to be working in the nonprofit sector. And when I say that, like there are so many different things that I could say to that, but like picture like something that brings me joy is helping nonprofits be louder than for profits. So like picture like walking in Times Square and like what do you see? Like advertisements for. It's like Nike and makeup and like entertainment and movies and I don't know, like Apple, like technology and like all these consumer products, all this like materialism. And I want to walk into Times Square and see like social cause advertisements. Like how different of a world would that be if you walk into Times Square and all you see is like people fighting against hunger, people fighting against poverty, people fighting for equity and social justice and all of these just like really amazing things that are happening. And that's just like a big passion, like a big joy of mine. And how can nonprofits kind of rise and get a little bit louder and like prouder of like the work that they're doing. It's something that like brings me a lot of joy.
Delaney, I love your vision. I'm curious, where did that diminished sense of pride come from over the last couple of years?
I don't know. I really don't. Like I hear something that really caught me off guard. It was one of the first webinars when I joined the Nonprofit Hub team that we hosted, and someone said, I'm a recovering fundraiser. And I'm like, why is that okay? Like, why is that a socially acceptable term? Like, like people are comfortable hearing that I'm a recovering fundraiser. And yeah, I just wonder, I think that there's almost a sense of if you work in the nonprofit space, people almost assume that you're like taking a pay cut, right? Like you're working for a lesser total compensation package because you're working in the nonprofit sector. So I don't necessarily think and money is a big deal, right? And like people's comfort level of talking about money is different. And a lot of people have insecurities about talking about money. And that's a big part of fundraising. Like you need to dig deep and understand what your relationship with money is and why does it make you so uncomfortable to ask someone for it. But yeah, I think that when someone asks you what you do and you openly say, yeah, I work for like a grassroots nonprofit organization. What are you internalizing about that is making you feel not confident? And I have to assume a little bit about it is total compensation package.
Sure. So is the challenge then that as nonprofit fundraisers, our board and stakeholders expect us to do the work because of our passion and our purpose. And perhaps that we're going to pour into it so much so in hoping that just the great work that we're doing sustains us opposed to the paycheck. Because I'm of the belief, no different than you, if I become economically and financially independent, I'm serving myself and I feel more complete. And now I can go out there and really pour more of myself into others, adding value to them. But you got to take care of you first. It comes back to the analogy of when you're on the plane, you put on your face mask first, and then you help the person next to you. And I mean, as unfortunate as it is, and I'm with you, Delaney, I believe that there's an incessant desire for material things to try and fill a black void in a hole. And sometimes that hole in life is your relationship with things. And so, I think the more we can sort of unpack like what really matters, the more we can get to know ourselves, the more we can then connect to others, the more we can go inward, the more we serve outward. And I know that was kind of tangential, but the point is like, it's ultimately coming back to, you've got to first serve you before you go out and serve others. But for young, scrappy nonprofits, that might be challenging because they don't have the financial resources to be able to take care of themselves. Yeah. So how do you address that challenge and have those conversations with your teams and your stakeholders and board members?
Yeah. And to speak to that too, I think that one of the prior executive director of Nonprofit Hub, Katie Apple, did a presentation just before she made her departure from the organization, but it was about limiting beliefs of nonprofit professionals. And one of those beliefs was that you shouldn't spend TED Talk, Dan Pelota, about like the overhead myth. And I 100% think that nonprofits at one point were pigeonholed into not wanting to spend a lot of money on their staff because of like societal expectations of what they're using money for.
Sure.
And nonprofits need to fight back against that. And one of Katie's recommendations was reporting on your About Us page or on your annual report that you pay your employees a living wage, that you offer health benefits, that this is an amazing place to work, and we compensate appropriately for the hard work that like our employees are doing, versus reporting that you have no fundraising expenses like for the year. I think there's a level of like trust and pride and like demonstrated confidence if you are saying we're an employer that does these things for our employees. And that's the way it should be for nonprofits. And to what I said before, people kind of assume you don't make a lot in nonprofit, but I don't necessarily think that's even the case. I think it's an assumption. I think it's like this stereotype of the sector. In fighting back, nonprofits fighting back and paying these living wages and reporting that they're paying these living wages and not being scared to say how much they spend on certain things, is all going to kind of help aid that stereotype, this like perception that people in the nonprofit sector are underpaid. And 100%, yes, some people are still being very underpaid. But this is one of the things that hopefully can help to kind of move that needle in the right direction.
Yeah, I love that. So this type of coaching, training, and access to a community of individuals who share in these stories, like, is that something that people can gain access to as a being a part or a member of Nonprofit Hub?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that open conversations about your compensation package are pretty common. There are so many different nonprofit community groups that you can get involved with. Like I love Nonprofit AF. I think that is like such a great group. And that is a conversation that happens every day. What should I be getting paid? What should I be being asked for? How can I advocate for my compensation package? There's even reports like the Michigan Nonprofit Association. I personally live in the west side of Michigan. The M&A puts out like a comprehensive compensation report of all of their nonprofit member organizations, so that you can kind of benchmark whether you're on the employer or the employee side, what is appropriate to be paying my employees, especially in my region, based on like what everyone else is doing. So that's a really cool tool as well.
That's awesome. I love that you're providing those types of resources to the members in your community. That's awesome. Is there a particular nonprofit myth that you'd like to dispel right here and now? I mean, I think we just unpacked one of them. Said everyone in the nonprofit world should do it for the love and make no money. So,
yes.
There's one
big myth. Yes. Okay, I have to reference Katie's presentation again, but this also is going to pay a lot of respect to Utopia. And it's that a lot of nonprofit content and education is about storytelling. Joey, you know this, right? It's everywhere. Yep. Storytelling. Have a story, tell your story. How can you tell your story better? Nonprofit myth. A story is not all you need. And the truth is, you need to have a strategy behind sharing your story. And that is almost more important. Well, it's like equally important to your story. So like, it's so sad when, like, say, for example, Utopia creates this amazing, beautiful video. And maybe Joey, you and I have actually already talked about this, but you generate this amazing video for a nonprofit. They put it up on Facebook and it has 0 views. Like, where was the strategy behind sharing this story? Like, creating the visual story is one part, but then who is like championing the promotional channels? Who's making sure that it's performing well? Who's evaluating it? That's all a part of storytelling. And I think a lot of the times nonprofits will do all this work to write great stories, great blogs, talk about things on a podcast, get a video made. And then there's like this disconnect between, now, how do we get it in front of the right people? So I think a big myth or like a misunderstanding is that a good story is all you need.
Yeah, that's a great one. Do you have an idea, like, maybe we could go through like a rapid fire in terms of like social media channels and where you think nonprofits should be distributing their content? Like, is it TikTok? Is it YouTube? There's a new one now, by the way. I don't remember what it's called.
Ooh. What is it? I don't know. I definitely don't know. I wish that I could say that I was like a social media expert, but I am definitely not.
I was just curious if you had a particular, a viewpoint on any social media channel that you're really excited by, or a distribution method in general, and what you think nonprofit, like, you should be hitting these 3 key social media channels when you're distributing your content. And if not, that's perfectly fine. I was just curious.
So this isn't even my wisdom, so I want people to take it with a grain of salt, but it is always better if your stakeholders and your constituents see you across, like, you should be seen on, I mean, there's like a marketing number. People need to see you 10 times in order to generate brand trust. So if they see you on LinkedIn and then they see you on Instagram and then they see you on Facebook and then they get your email, like, you're on your way. Maybe they listen to your podcast, maybe they see an advertisement on a billboard, and then maybe they see, I don't know, like, there has to be so many different touch points and different types of channels. We work with a media company, and they still heavily recommend LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Facebook tends to perform the best for our organization. And then Twitter has always been a really awesome place for like advocacy organizations. And I think that still is like number 1 today for that specific type of nonprofit organization. I'm personally excited about, I know TikTok is growing in popularity, and a lot of nonprofits, should probably be checking out TikTok. I'm personally excited about LinkedIn for our organization and kind of utilizing that. And two that I'm most excited about, YouTube and LinkedIn.
Are you familiar with YouTube Shorts?
I'm not.
So this is new. So basically what we're doing with our podcast, because you talk about the most important thing, and we are a content creation company, right? Like that's literally what we do. We create event experiences and videos for nonprofits and corporations to help more people care about them, ultimately is what it comes down to. And so we have to walk the walk, and if we're going to talk the talk. And so what we're doing now is these podcasts are opportunities for us to have conversations and develop relationships with individuals like you. We wouldn't have known each other and have, it provides us an opportunity to deepen our relationships with prospective partners and people that we want to work with. Mm-hmm. And then after that, I mean, the fortune is in the follow-up. And we always share with our nonprofit organizations that we can come in and produce this incredible experience for you and film all these videos, and you've got all this content. But the fortune is in the follow-up. It's about you using that content to help you go further.
Yes.
You know, sharing it with your donors, sharing it with your stakeholders, putting it out there on social media, writing blogs around it.
This was the myth. Shorts. Your content isn't going to solve the problem,
exactly.
But what are you going to do with it? Yeah.
And we always share with our groups too, if you don't have a proper distribution method and a marketing team that can help you get everything out there, then you should not invest the money with us because it's not going to be helpful for you. And we're very transparent about that. So who would you say is the right individual to join Nonprofit Hub, and what might that individual gain from talking with you or with one of your team members at Nonprofit Hub?
Mm-hmm. So I want to make sure, I'll probably say this a couple of times, but 90% of what Nonprofit Hub offers is completely free. So we do a blog article, we do a podcast episode, we do a live webinar, we do a newsletter. All of those resources are totally free, downloadable guides on topics, again, spanning the nonprofit management spectrum. Anyone in an organization that is new to their role, maybe they're new to the nonprofit sector, maybe they have like a substantial goal to increase revenue in 2023, or maybe they're launching a capital campaign for the first time, like new initiatives that maybe you haven't done before that you're looking into doing or you want to do really well. Nonprofithub.org is just a great tool to be able to type in this question, type in this topic, and get really easily digestible, like actionable content that will help you accomplish those things and make moves and all of those things that you want to do. And what's really great about nonprofithub.org is that we're not product backed. There are so many amazing service and product providers in the nonprofit space, serving nonprofit organizations specializing in nonprofit work. And they also put out amazing content. Like they all want nonprofits to grow and do better and learn from like these best practices that are occurring in the sector and new trends and all of this kind of stuff. What's beautiful about Nonprofit Hub is that we're this medium to collect all of this amazing content and education and new trends and put it out there in a way that doesn't expect you to make moves in paying money for services or product providers, but we're still making an avenue for you to do that if that's the best case and course of action for you. But first, it's about getting you to the next day for your capital campaign. And then whether or not you want to make a relationship with a service or product provider to help you do that better, that becomes like an option as well through utilizing the resources on Nonprofit Hub. But we're such like an inclusive community as well. We're not specific to any cause or vertical. And that's, I think, a really beautiful thing about the Nonprofit Hub membership.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Mm-hmm. Delaney, anything else that you wanted to share? Just like parting advice or wisdom that you want to leave our audience with?
Okay, parting advice or wisdom. Incorporating the concept of moral intelligence into your everyday decision-making. This is like another thing that I learned in my master's program, and it just has always stuck with me on a daily basis, like even outside of my career choice and my career path. But moral intelligence is, I think like the definition is your responsibility to act in relation to what you know. And I don't know why that stuck with me so strongly, but it's like when I learned about these things in high school, these like different experiences of people and this like this inequity of experience and support and resources, I couldn't know that and not do something about it. And so it applied to my career path, but it's so applicable to everyday decision making. So like, and I laugh because like this is how applicable it is. Like Joey, you're in the bathroom and the toilet paper runs out. You know the toilet paper is gone. Like, what is your responsibility to act in relation to what you know in that moment? Like, some people won't replace the toilet paper roll; they'll walk away, right? And it's funny because it applies to these like little everyday decisions. Like, you see an error on a web page. There's an error. What is your responsibility to act in relation to what you know? Are you going to do something about it? Or are you going to like pretend you didn't see it and like move on with your day? Just like these little things that happen every day. Like, is it okay to you? Like, moral is this concept of right or wrong. Is it okay to you to walk away from something that you know is wrong? Or do you have a responsibility to act? And that's this concept of like moral intelligence that I think is like a really beautiful thing.
I love that. These things that can otherwise be like seemingly insignificant in our lives can actually amount to, a one interaction, one decision can totally change the entire trajectory of our lives. I mean, just holding the door at somebody for Starbucks. Yeah. Think about what that can do in terms of, like, you don't know what that person is carrying. We talked a little earlier about the student in the classroom that made the comment. You don't know what that person's lived experience is and what they might be dealing with. And so whether it comes to changing the toilet paper in the bathroom so the next person has a full roll of toilet paper, or holding the door for you at Starbucks, we can all just be a little bit more mindful of those decisions that we make on a daily basis. And that's awesome, Delaney. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. That's a wrap. Delaney, again, it's been an honor, and I'm super excited for your journey, your continued journey at Nonprofit Hub. And thank you so much for joining us today on the Impact Roadmap podcast.
Thanks, Joey. It was awesome. It was so much fun.
Hey, if this episode was valuable to you, then share it with someone that you love, someone that you know that could benefit from it. Also, be sure to subscribe, and depending on how you're listening, go ahead and leave a comment or review. This will help ensure that we are connecting with other nonprofit leaders so that we can get this critical information out to them. And if your company is in the early or even late stages of putting on an event, go to our website, utopiaexperience.com, and click the Book Us tab and schedule a free discovery call to see if our services would be a right fit for your event. And even if they're not, that's okay. I promise you our expertise can steer you in the right direction, so you'll get value either way. Thanks for listening to the Impact Roadmap, and we'll see you next time.